Good time of day, guys. My name is Godzi, and welcome back to another episode of Higurashi When They Cry, Ch.1 Onikakushi. Last episode, Keiichi tried thinking things through, being like, what's actually happening? I'm probably gonna die. And that was his conclusion. So he wrote a note, put it in his clock, and he's heading to school to try to get a baseball bat. So, hell yeah, I think I basically know everything else that's going to happen for the rest of the arc. Like I've said before, this is definitely the arc I'm the most familiar with. So yeah, but before we get into the bulk of the episode, there are two topics that I want to cover. The first one is non-spoilers, the second one is spoilers though, so I will let y'all know when I go there, and same thing as always, when I do this, it won't be spoilers anymore, but it's not starting yet, I'll let you know when it is. So, I got a comment last episode, saying something about the anime, which should be starting, actually, no, it should be starting tomorrow, the day after this goes up. So, yeah, October 1st, if I recall correctly. At least October 1st in Japan. I can't remember if... I don't know if that means it'd still be October 1st in America or October 1st in England, whenever, or if it'd be October 2nd, regardless. They said that the comment said that they recommend that I go straight into the second chapter when I finish this arc, which should be over in about 2 episodes, including this one. So yeah, because apparently the season of the anime is going to be covering... this is just their guess. I couldn't find any information on this anywhere. I tried looking on Mal, fucking, like, everywhere. I tried looking everywhere I could, in order to find information on how much the anime is going to cover. But they're thinking that because a character who I did not remember... Uh-oh. Why is it doing that? because a character that I did not actually remember named... I'm just sitting on here so that when I scroll through the comments, it's not going to do that. A character who I did not personally remember named Irie was shown in the most recent PV for the anime. And according to this commenter, his first appearance in the game is the 3rd arc. So they believe that that means the anime, which is going to be 2 cores, at least. That's the only thing that I could find for sure. So it's probably going to be covering more than just Onikakushi. Especially since Shion also appeared. And, the PV, who is a character that only shows up in the 2nd arc and onwards. She does not show up in the 1st arc. They were saying that the anime is probably going to cover at least through the 3rd arc, since Irie shows up in the PV. I could not find any information on exactly what the anime is going to be covering, but I personally was under the impression that the 2nd core, so like episodes 13 through 24-ish, could be 14 through 26 even if we get a longer double core, so like 26 episodes instead of 24. I was under the impression that the 1st core would be covering Onikakushi, and the 2nd core would be covering the 2nd chapter. I cannot remember the name of the arc. But, yeah, I was under that impression, so I was thinking the 2nd core will start in January, so I should be sure to Let's Play the 2nd chapter before January. So I was thinking, like, after I complete this series, I would do another series, and then I would do the next arc. And then I would be fine with the 2nd arc for the anime. However, it's looking like that might not be the case. It's still super up in the air, and information has not exactly been transparent as to what's being adapted. So the commenter thinks that the first core is going to be the first 2 arcs, and the second core would be the 3rd and 4th arc, they're saying. Because apparently the 4th arc is the shortest of all of them. So, yeah, if that's actually true, then I want to stay ahead of the anime with this Let's Play, so yeah, I'm cutting it pretty close with finishing Onikakushi here before the anime starts. However, my guess is that, as long as I record the whole thing before the anime starts, I think I'm fine. But, yeah, assuming there are 2 more episodes, the finale would go up on this Friday, October 2nd, which might be when the first episode airs, but I'm not 100% sure. Either way, I think what I will do is... Okay, there's still more information, actually, that I want to say, though. I did hear that there were plans to adapt through at least the 3rd arc initially, but I did not know that it would be during the new anime running from October to March. So, yeah, I was thinking that they just meant, oh, we already have plans to do another season in the further future adapting the 3rd arc. Of course, Irie being in the PV does kind of throw a wrench in that theory. However, something that I found out that the commenter also brought up is that Ryukishi is working alongside the studio. I think it's Studio Pashone that's doing the anime. Let me check that quick. I have Mal open here. Yes, it's Pashone. Ryukishi's working with them, and it seems that he's going to be writing in new events and stuff, so I don't know if that means the story will be reworked, or if it's just going to be clarifications or ways to incorporate the tips, maybe, since the point of the tips, as I've been told, is that... Fuck. I had someone in mind, but I lost it. What was the point of the tips? The point of the tips was to give information to the reader that did not fit into the pacing of the story otherwise. So, kind of like an endnote, I suppose. So, yeah. From that information, though, that there are going to be new events inserted, I'm thinking that it is possible that it might still just be the first 2 arcs, because I think 24 to 26 episodes is definitely too much to adapt just Onikakushi. It seems like it'd be a good amount, I think, to adapt Onikakushi and the 2nd arc, assuming the 2nd arc is about as long as this one, which I'm not sure whether it is or not. Since the visual novel takes like 10 to 12 hours to get through, it seems, at least this first chapter, it makes sense to be adapted like an hour of gameplay into a 24-minute episode. That just made sense to me, so that's probably why I was under that impression. But I did actually go back in my Let's Play, and because when the name Irie was brought up, part of me was thinking, that name sounds familiar, but I do not remember the character that they're talking about. But I think it was in episode 8 of this series, Keiichi went to a clinic which was called the Irie Clinic. So I'm thinking it might be possible that they'll introduce him in the first arc of the anime, since, well, by all means he could, if he was in fact the doctor that was helping Keiichi there. But there might be a narrative reason that I'm forgetting about, of course. And yeah, I think it'd be really weird, though, for them to have a PV showing characters beyond the 2nd arc, when the PV actually only showed snippets of events from the 1st arc. So, like, it shows what happens at the very end of the arc, Or at least snippets, obviously. It doesn't show exactly what happens. It shows what happens at the very end of the arc. It shows Rena's initial outburst. Well, not the outburst itself, but like the build up to the outburst. It shows Rena peering in the doorway, which actually hasn't happened yet, so oops. And it shows... It just shows a lot. It shows parts of the festival. I don't think it showed Tomatake's death, but still. There was a whole part of the PV where it was showing just the character reel, basically. So, like, this is Keiichi, and it lists who their voice actor is in Japanese. I can't read Japanese at all. So, yeah. But that's what it is. I'm pretty sure CV : means that's their voice actor or actress, or seiyuu if you prefer that term. So, yeah, and Shion and Irie were part of it. I don't think they would try to show Shion in the first arc. So I do think that at the very least the anime will be adapting the first and second arcs. But I do think it's possible, potentially, that Irie could be shown before the third arc. Because, like, I think there's a big reason why they don't want to show Shion until the second arc. So, yeah. But still, that's about it. That's about all. After I watched the first episode, I would like to think that I'd be able to tell from how much is covered in that episode whether or not the anime is going to be adapting through in like 24 episodes through just the first 2 arcs or the first 3 or 4. So, yeah. Either way, the pacing should definitely be better than the original anime, because I actually checked to see how that was adapted. Of the 8 main arcs, they had like they adapted 9 arcs, which was weird, because I think there's only 8. I was told about something called console arcs in the past, though, so I don't know if that's something. But, like, the first 6 arcs, or 6 total arcs, I don't know the names of the arcs beyond Onikakushi. So, yeah. Regardless of what happens, the anime should have better pacing than the original anime, so that's good enough. And, I can't think at all, ever. No matter what happens, depending on the pacing of the first episode, I might go straight into the second chapter when I complete this Let's Play, or I'll wait like a little bit. If I need a little bit more time, I'll try to do little buffers, because I have some extra Smash Bros. And Among Us videos that I recorded with my friends that I could upload, and we're planning on playing Jackbox this weekend, so I might have that to upload too. So, yeah, if Colby even lets me record it, because we, like, alternate our Jackbox sessions, but maybe since it's our first time doing this in this pack, I'm not saying which pack number it is. We've done 1 in 6 in the past. We have not done 2, 3, 4, or 5. We actually did do a little bit of 4, but my audio didn't record in that one, so oops. Regardless of what happens, regardless how much the anime covers, I'm going to try my best to stay ahead of the curve and let's play more of Higurashi as it goes. So, like, if Onikakushi's going to be covered in just 6 episodes in the anime, and then the second arc will be episodes like 7 through 12, then I'll probably just go straight into the next arc, because it should probably take me about a month if I don't miss an episode. Because, like, I think I missed 2 or 3 episodes of this series, yet I still managed to finish, like, most of it in a month. Assuming that episode 11, which is next episode, will be the finale of the arc, then, yeah, within a month's time frame, because this series started back on the 7th of this month, so, yeah. Long-winded bullshit out of the way. No matter what happens, I'll stay ahead of the curve. Let's play the arcs before they're covered in the anime. So, yeah. Now it's spoilers time. I'm going to minimize my browser window. Fuck! Actually, no, I don't need to minimize my browser window. Because, yeah. Alright. Mute now? because I need to find this. It was the first part of the comment, so yeah, spoiler time now. So I made a comment during spoiler time last episode talking about Rika and how she's going through a time loop, essentially trying to Groundhog's Day her way into fixing everything, from what I remember. I know she's at least in a time loop, if nothing else. So, yeah, I asked the question, basically saying, is this the first time Rika's experiencing all of this, or is this one of many times that she's experienced this? Turns out, that question was answered in the comments, and they said that this is not the first time. This is not the first arc, I guess. Fragment would probably be a better word. This is not the first fragment, to use Umineko terms there. This is not the first fragment that Rika has been through. She's been through more before. It's not clear how many, but still. But whenever it's Keiichi who goes mad, she gives up. Because, as the comment says, it's a result of him leaving Hinamizawa to go to his grandma's funeral. I don't remember that, honestly. So, yeah. But regardless, I do faintly remember something about Keiichi having visited Hinamizawa in the past, which I don't think has been mentioned up to this point. I think up to this point, the game's just been trying to make it seem like, oh, Keiichi's never been to Hinamizawa before he moved there. But I'm pretty sure that's not the case, and I think that's what that comment's trying to say. So the way Rika sees it, he's lost to the syndrome by then. So, I don't know if that means Rika thinks that Keiichi always has some semblance of Hinamizawa syndrome, because I know this isn't the only arc where he has it. If I remember correctly, like, I think next arc, it's Mion. Then the arc after, well, I don't remember each subsequent arc. I think there's an arc where Satoko has it. Then I think there's another arc where Keiichi has it, but it focuses less on him thinking everyone's out to get him and more on it's just Keiichi going crazy, yada yada. I think it's from a different person's perspective for the most part there. Then I think there's another arc where it's Shion and another arc where it's Rena. I don't remember if there's ever an arc where it's multiple characters. I think it's only ever just one. So, yeah. The arc where it's Shion is fucking ridiculous from what I remember, so I'm excited to get to that one. I think that's either the 5th or 6th. I can't remember, but regardless. Another thing about Rika, the commenter says that they wouldn't call her the main character. It only seems like that in the anime because her parts were given way more time proportionally to the length in the VNs. That makes sense. The anime seems to focus, from what I can tell so far, it seems like the anime initially focused more or less on different characters than the visual novel did. So, like, it focused more on Rika than it did on Uishi or Tomitake. So, yeah. So, Rika is probably, you know, that's probably why I thought she was the main character, so to speak. So, I guess it's not like that. Perhaps. It seems like Higurashi, then, in that case, is a series with no main character, but a main cast, rather. So, yeah. Kind of like, well, not kind of like Danganronpa, but sort of like Danganronpa, in that every character's important in their own right, but there is a protagonist, so to speak. So, I guess it's more like Rika's the protagonist, but not necessarily the main character, so, yeah. Spoiler time over. That took 20 minutes. So, let's just fucking get into this. I might go to an hour 20 because of this long discussion, though. So, think of that as an offset. More of an addendum to the episode, but at the beginning. So yeah, let's get into it. Time for Keiichi to go mental. This was the first time I'd ever woke with such clarity. It was 5:59, just moments before my alarm would go off. I was amazed at the precision of my internal clock. I had made preparations for the next day of school before I went to bed. I changed quickly and descended to the deserted lower floor. Why wouldn't you just set your alarm a bit earlier then, instead of relying on waking up before it? It appeared that my mom was still asleep. Neither breakfast nor lunch was ready. Yesterday, I just unilaterally declared that I would be leaving early today, so it couldn't be helped. I slathered jam on some bread and topped it with instant cocoa. That's an interesting combination. Chocolate and jelly and bread. Awesome. Just as I was finishing up breakfast, Mom rose groggily from her slumber. My, Keiichi, you're up early. Is there some sort of school event? Not really. Answering bluntly, I picked up my bag and stood after stuffing 2 slices of bread down my throat. You're leaving already? What about lunch? If you don't wait a bit, I can't make it. If I waited for her to make my lunch, then it would end up being the same time as usual. If I did that, it would raise the chances of me running into Rena and Mion on the way. Yes, from today onwards, I was going to go to school alone. I'll be fine for today. Then what will you do for lunch? I'll slip out and buy some bread or something at the store. Really? Then here's some lunch money. Be sure to bring me back the receipt. I took the 1,000 yen bill from Mom and slipped it into my pocket. That's like $10, right? It's pretty early. Is Rena-chan up this early as well? No, just me. Did you tell Rena-chan that you're leaving early? I have no reason to tell her every little detail now, do I? Finding it difficult answering the onslaught of questions, I made an annoyed face. Tell Rena that I went ahead when she comes. Hey, Keiichi? Wait! It's not that I didn't trust my parents, I just couldn't rely on them. They couldn't help me. I could only hope that they didn't get involved. It was safer that way. My mom's annoying voice was cut off by the slam of the door. Okay, dude. For the first time since I moved here, I headed down the road to school alone. Better not get lost and almost get run over by a car. Up until now, I had always walked down the same path at the same time each day. So I always met with the same people at the same places. But today was different. I didn't meet the people I would normally, and nobody was at the places where I would have normally met them. Of course, Rena wasn't in the spot where we usually met, and there wasn't anyone at the spot where we would have met up with Mion. The length of the tree's shadows, the morning air, and the brightness of the sun, it was a completely different type of morning from what I was used to. Without a doubt, it felt strange. It left me with the impression that I had destroyed the illusion Hinamizawa had set up for me before I had enough time to prepare all of the props needed to deceive me. Long sentence, I need to breathe more. My, Keiichi-kun! You're so early today. Is everyone meeting early this morning? The person who called out to me was someone we always passed by as they were taking a walk along the edge of the fields. Their name was, I forgot. Of course, this wasn't the spot where we usually passed each other. I woke up early today, so I thought it'd be a good change of pace. That's all. I threw out a random excuse. What about Rena-chan and Mion-chan? Are you by yourself today? Well, yeah. I was being asked the same type of questions my mom was asking, so I answered them in the same uninteresting, vague manner. It wasn't funny being asked where Rena was each time I passed by someone, but maybe it was to be expected. It was because for so long, we were always together so amicably. Even I felt that if I let my guard down, we could still be friends. Stop it, Keiichi. Don't think about that anymore. You spent all day yesterday thinking about how dangerous it was to go soft, didn't you? Oh, here we go. Beep, beep, beep! A car horn blared out from nowhere. Even though I was walking, lost in thought, that horn was way too close. A mechanical behemoth barreled at me from behind, catching me completely off guard. By the time I turned around, the van's hulking chassis was almost on top of me. I'd seen plenty of cars veer to the opposite shoulder to avoid pedestrians, but this car was doing the opposite. It felt like there was someone on the opposite shoulder and the van was swerving in my direction to avoid them. That blissfully ignorant train of thought delayed me from realizing something much, much more important. That large mass was hurtling right at me. Was it going to hit me? The inside of my head instantly flooded with a painfully cold liquid. Ooh. In that moment, the scene before me, no, time itself had frozen. I kind of like how the setting of the game and this whole thing with switching to negative, like photo negative colors, really kind of makes the area look like hell. You know, with like purple grass, red trees, orange skies. It's interesting. In the silence of that frozen moment, I compared the van, so close that I had no way to dodge it, and my body, the upper half twisted awkwardly in order to look behind me. There was no way I could dive out of the way in my current position. If I lost focus now, this moment would unpause, and I would probably be plowed over, caught in this silly pose. Bend my upper body over towards the paddy by the side of the road. If I bent far enough, I could get away with just being hit by the side view mirror. As soon as the thought crossed my mind, the temporal stasis was shattered by the deafening sound of the van. The side mirror struck my shoulder, sending me spinning off through the air like a top, locked in my contorted position. Splash! Sent tumbling through the air, I crashed into the muddy paddy by the side of the road. My entire body was soiled and drenched, but the choice I had made in that instant was unmistakably for the best. I was covered in mud, but when the alternative was being hit by the car, it was the closest I could be to being unscathed. Rising out from the paddy, I had enough in me to glare over at the stopped van and yell profanities at the driver. I'm not sure if he was able to see me, but the van sped off suddenly. Wait, damn it! This was what they call a hit and run, wasn't it? I couldn't help but continue yelling out profanities. The disgrace from being covered in mud hurt me more than any physical wounds. I slogged through the muddy paddy and made my way back onto the road. This is a crime, goddammit! Shit, I'll track you down and sue you! If I go looking for a van, I'm sure to find it in this little village. The path I was on had rice paddies on either side, and it had become so narrow that one car could barely fit through. It wasn't a place you could tear full speed down in a car, let alone pass by the pedestrians. Not only was it a narrow road, but the car just now was closer to my side of the road than the other when it went past me. Even as I cursed, I was desperately trying to suppress the dark cloud boiling up within me. GTA? This wasn't just a hit and run. That car just now was trying to run me over, wasn't it? Thinking back, I did feel like there had been a car creeping up on me slowly for a while. That's right. As soon as I'd parted ways with that person taking a walk, I had that feeling the whole time. If it had wanted to pass me, then it had no shortage of chances. Normally, I would have felt suspicious and turned around sooner, but I was lost in thought, and I was kicking myself for not realizing it was there sooner. And then, when the path became narrow and there was no one else in sight, he floored it. If I had hesitated for even a moment, the result would have been no laughing matter. As the adrenaline rush from nearly being run over subsided, and the realization of just how terrifying the preceding events were sunk in. There was no doubt about it. That van was intentionally trying to hit me. A cold, viscous sweat seeped from my scalp and slid down my back before dribbling off. I struggled to avoid falling into a panic. There was still the possibility that this was really just an accident. Calm down, Keiichi. But also don't be so naive, Keiichi. Being that lax will get you killed next time. You need to always be on your toes. Don't give them any openings. If my enemy was really out to kill me, then next time they would use a more reliable method. If that time came and I was acting like I was now, getting covered in mud was the price I had paid for my own naivete. Covered in mud, but without injury. Not even a sprain. I guess this was what you would call the silver lining. I began walking again, this time cautiously. I wouldn't even show a hint of carelessness. I had suspected only Rena and the others up until now. No, it was because I had suspected them that I had believed there were no other enemies. Uishi-san had said so, didn't he? There was a possibility of a village conspiracy. Was I really mired so deeply in the situation that I had no choice but to try and carry on as usual? Wouldn't it be safest just to hole myself up in my house? But the moment I abandoned my regular routine, everyone around me would abandon theirs as well. That was just too horrifying of a thought. I recalled the tales Uishi-san told me of when Hinamizawa was still called Onikakushi. The frightening tale of an entire village of demons hunting their prey surrounding them and eating them alive. One must not interfere with the demons. One must pretend not to see it. The enemy were numerous, the whole village. The villagers, with their unwavering faith in the curse, would do nothing to help me. The strong, sudden flash of sunshine made me slightly dizzy. I had no idea what was going on anymore. When I suspected it was the work of man, I would catch a glimpse of Oyashiro-sama's curse. And when I suspected it was Oyashiro-sama's curse, someone would poke their head out. Was that coincidence? What was intentional? Wait, what was coincidence? What was intentional? Who was my enemy? Who was just a bystander? No, what I really, truly wanted to know was, how did I end up with the proverbial bullseye painted on my back? Eventually, an answer in a form I could understand will appear. I don't care when that will happen. Because until then, I cannot die! That alone fueled my resolve to fight and will keep me alive. Alright. School time. Kind of. I remembered seeing the metal bat in the gym storage shed, but there was a padlock on the door barring my entry. At the very least, I wanted to get my hands on it before everyone else arrived at school. I circled around the school grounds impatiently. But all I could find were things like pieces of lumber, nothing that I could bring into the classroom easily. Then, I had an epiphany. I should search inside the classroom. If it was something in the classroom to begin with, then there wouldn't be a problem. I could tell that everyone's indoor shoes were still in their lockers. Good thing I came early. Nobody else was here yet. I wondered, what could I find in the classroom? I didn't think I could find an especially effective weapon like a bat, but it couldn't be helped at this point. Until the gym storage shed was open, I needed to find a substitute. A lingering hint of naivete whispered that there was no way I'd be attacked at school. But such soft ideas would no longer protect me. To think that they were slowly making their way into parts of my life that I had once thought impenetrable. In the worst case, my own house might not be safe anymore. That was an incredibly frightening thought. But I believe that not considering the worst case scenario would have been even more frightening. Anyways, I will survive. So long as I lived, then I will definitely be able to escape this labyrinth of nonsense. Definitely. No, you won't. Shut your mouth. My exploration of the classroom came to an impasse. That much was to be expected. There was no way there would be anything that could be a weapon in the classroom. Vase. Like, desk. Smash that clock behind that curtain and use its minute and hour hands as little daggers. There's a bunch of pencils there and some rulers. If there's some rope somewhere, or rubber bands, then you could easily just make a makeshift bow and arrow, shoot pencils at people. There's some tacks on the wall. You're just not creative enough, Keiichi. Look at those metal dividers. You could easily bonk someone with those. There's some jars of, like, peanut butter or something in the corner there. There's some big books. Holy fuck, those are big books. You could probably put a bunch of shoes in a bag and wave them around like fucking a madman. There's probably something else. I don't know. The strap around the curtain. You could use that as a whip if you twist it enough. In case of emergency, there was probably nothing I could do but swing my own chair around. Yeah, there's chairs too. My gaze landed on the lockers that had come to be used for personal storage. The locker that Mion used to store her pile of games was among them. There was one for each person in the class, all lined up. Of course, there was one for me as well. Oh yeah, there was supposed to still be a tracksuit in my locker. Seeing me covered in mud would be strange. I should go change later. But first, I needed a weapon. If one of my classmates came, it would be hard to rummage through all the lockers. I swiftly began opening the lockers one by one. They were mostly just filled with things like gym clothes, personal items, and umbrellas. Yeah, there's a weapon. An umbrella. If I couldn't find anything better, then this would have to be my weapon. Fuck yeah, just set it up at the bottom of a staircase. I've never even watched another. I just happen to know that scene exists. I was about to give up on finding anything decent when I opened a locker that held exactly what I wanted. Ah, yes. The bat. It was, without a doubt, a metal bat. It was well worn and pretty beaten up, but there was no doubt it was usable. A wooden bat, I feel like, would be a more effective weapon, at least if you're strong enough to swing it around fast enough. in that locker that reeked of mold, there also hung a baseball uniform. It was probably the locker of a student in a Pee-wee league or something like that. If that was the case, then he'd probably ask for it back. At that time, I could hear the voices of the children scuffling their way noisily in from the hallway. Amongst them, I could make out Rika-chan and Satoko. Good morning. My, you're quite early this morning, Keiichi-san. I nonchalantly hid the bat I was holding behind my back. What is with your outfit? You're covered in mud. Yeah, I had a little incident. I'm going to change now, so cut me some slack. With that said, I began taking off my clothes. Satoko began to blush just as I expected her to. Alright, dude, you're gonna just do that here? Changing in front of a lady? Have you no tact at all? I would think that a lady staring at someone who is changing would be the one lacking in tact. There's no changing room for the boys, so just deal with it. Is there not a bathroom? As Satoko feigned disgust, she went into the hall, still blushing. Okay. Conversely, Rika-chan continued to stare at me, preparing to change. If Rika-chan is a lady as well, then I don't think it would be appropriate for you to be watching. I'm not a lady, so it's fine. She deliberately pouted and looked at me with upturned eyes. Then, starting now, you're a lady. If I'm a lady, then I suppose I must. Okay, bye. Rika-chan, appearing to be satisfied with being considered a lady, made her way to join Satoko in the hallway. Just as I breathed a sigh of relief, Rika-chan stopped suddenly and turned back towards me. Are you going to start playing baseball? It seems that Rika-chan had noticed the bat. Yeah, just, you know, it was feeling a bit out of shape. So I thought I'd just try practicing my swing. I think it's wonderful you're taking care of your health. You've really given up on him. She was talking like an old lady, despite her appearance. After saying that, Rika-chan started to leave again, but stopped and looked back at me once more. Please don't lose that bat. Wonder why. Seems she already knew I took it out of someone's locker. There was no name on the locker door. I didn't know whose bat it was, but I would be borrowing it until they complained. It wouldn't be for long, just until the gym storage shed was opened. After quickly changing into the tracksuit, I checked the time. I still had plenty of time before class began because I came so early. Time to practice swinging, yeah! I took the bat in one hand and went out to the schoolyard. That was, of course, to practice my swing. I needed to make it known I would always have a bat on me so I could practice my swing. Congratulations, Keiichi. Now you can go on college campuses, act like Caitlin Bennett, be transphobic, and when people have a problem with you, you just say, you know I carry, right? That's a very convoluted joke, but I wanted to make it. At some point, the sunlight had become even stronger. That's called the sun's rising, dude. Disregarding my classmates as they made their way to school, I took my position in the shadow of the school building. I wasn't the academic type, and I wasn't much of an athlete either. I might get muscle pain if I just suddenly started swinging. I should at least start out with some warm-ups. I doubt anyone would think I was doing something out of the ordinary. Which was the exact opposite of my actual mental state. I gripped the bat and swung lightly. The bat was by no means light. Oh, is it not a fucking hollow baby bat? Cool. The weight would make it a reliable weapon when I needed it to be. Of course, I could only pray that the moment I needed to use this as a weapon would never come. Just carrying it around could deter attacks against me. At least, that's what I hoped. Hi, guys. Huh? Kei-chan? What are you doing? Being bombarded with such a hysterical voice, I jumped. Whoa, Keiichi-kun? Are you on the baseball team? The baseball team? It was Rena and Mion. I was surprised to hear you went off ahead. What are you doing, Kei-chan? Can't you tell by looking? I'm practicing my swing. For the championship. You can say it's part of my diet if you want. Diet? Kei-chan, are you really that fat? Bet you didn't know. I actually have a beer belly. It's plump and jiggles. Plump and jiggles. Okay. Rena, you don't have to imagine something weird like that. To disrupt Rena from imagining something that vulgar, I ruffled her hair messily. Well then, hope you make it to regionals at least. This old man will cheer you on. Regionally speaking, it seems that Oshima High is pretty strong. They say their southpaw, Kameda-kun, is amazing. Good luck. Seems they've already taken me for a baseball nut, but oh well. Well, if I really did make it to the championship, it would be a cinch. After all, I'd be the pitcher and catcher. I'd pitch the ball, then run past the ball I just threw and change over to being the catcher in a burst of super incredible explosive speed. Okay, dude. You might as well. I laughed dryly at the ludicrous image. Coming back to my senses, I smashed the bat against the ground. Damn it! What am I laughing at? I pounded the ground over and over. With each impact, the reverberation traveling through the bat stung my hands. If they smile at me like that, Ugh! Don't allow anyone close to me. Don't trust anyone. No matter how many times I tell myself that. If they made me smile like that, Ugh! I already knew quite well that there were demons dwelling in my smiling friends. But I just couldn't believe it. Did that kind of split personality really exist? Like how Rena confessed to the doctor? Were they simply being possessed by Oyashiro-sama? In other words, did a supernatural being like Oyashiro-sama really exist? And was it possessing everyone to try and kill me? Yeah, that would be wonderful. If only everyone were actually my friends all along and everything was all just Oyashiro-sama's fault. You damned fool, Keiichi Maebara! Come on now! I yelled out, drawing out all the power from the pit of my stomach. You mean your beer belly? And raised the bat violently into the air. Stop being so soft! As I screamed out with all my might, I beat the metal bat into the ground over and over. With every impact, my weakness was being beaten down. Smash. Forget. Smash. Don't be soft. This is a fucking... What would be the word? Callback? To the beginning? I think? Smash. Know your enemy. Smash. Like hell I'd let them kill me. My shoulders heaving up and down from my ragged breathing, I heard the first bell ring just as I calmed down. Alrighty. So when did I start to get even more afraid of Keiichi? I gasped with a sudden realization. That was the final bell. I felt all the tension drain from me. I let out a deep breath. My mind was in a muddled state for much of the entire day. I didn't feel like I was awake, but it didn't feel like I was asleep either. I couldn't say it felt especially comfortable, but I felt a kind of relief that the sanctity of the school part of my daily life had yet to be violated. How long would I have to keep on living like this? I could only grit my teeth and bear with it as this living hell slowly gnawed away at me. Keiichi-kun! Come on! It's club time! Club time! The sound of Rena's voice brought me back to my senses. Come on, Kei-chan. Stop spacing out. Bring your desk. Your desk. Everyone was moving their desks together as usual. That's right, it was happy fun club time. But I had no intention of taking part. I haphazardly stuffed the contents of my desk into my bag as I prepared to go home. It was a weak-handed gesture to avoid having to actually say, I'll be going home now. What's this, Kei-chan? You planning on going home right away again? Mion sounded quite disappointed. I'm just not in the mood. Could you just let me be for a while? The tone of the words that spilled from my mouth matched Mion's disapproving glare. Felt like the air in the room had dried out. Satoko looked like she was about to say something, but perhaps dissuaded by the mood, she swallowed her words and stayed silent. Nobody said a thing. It took that to mean I could leave if I wanted. But the collective gaze of the four of them, like the tiny pins used to mount an insect in a display, held me in place. Rena was the one who cut through the heavy mood. Keiichi-kun, you just didn't like playing with girls, I guess. She said in such a melancholic tone that it sent a wave of pain racing through my heart. If this pain was going to kill me, I wanted it to be the soft part of me that could still feel pain. I tore at my chest, violently tearing out the pins that held me in place. That's not it at all! I'd only be hurting myself by saying anything more, so I swallowed my words. Cutting things off there, I turned away and exited the classroom. They didn't speak a word to me as I left. Why not just suggest you play baseball? It was a long, dull trip back home, but I didn't lose focus. I firmly squeezed the grip of the bat, which was already soggy from sweat. Realizing that, I wiped it down with my sleeve. If something were to happen, I wouldn't want it to be slippery. Since this morning, I'd become especially sensitive to the presence of cars. Even while walking, my ears pricked up and sought out threatening sounds and presences that could be closing in. And that was why I could hear it. Without a doubt, there were footsteps. Those footsteps had matched up perfectly with mine for a while now. From what I could sense, it was just one person, but I had no intention of being careless. Did they intend to follow me like that car this morning until we were in a good location to assault me? Then it wasn't a good idea to keep walking like this. I stopped walking and looked back. The wooded path crowded with trees responded with silence as if there was nobody there to begin with. But I wouldn't be fooled. I was certain footsteps were following me. And just as I stopped, the footsteps stopped as well. Meaning, the person following me wanted to keep their distance. That was, without question, proof that I was their target. I held my breath, waiting for that presence to panic and start moving again. The trees rustled with the sound of the wind. The Higurashi also joined in the dissonant chorus, trying to throw my focus into disarray. Had 5 minutes passed? Or had I been like this for a whole 30 minutes? It was so hard to breathe that I might have suffocated. It seemed I would be the first one to panic. Without a doubt, he was lurking in the shade of that tree with bated breath. Yeah, he. Then, I'd make the first move. I fixed my grip on the bat. I raised it up to my shoulder to be ready to swing it at any time. Hey! I know you're there! With all my might, I screamed at whoever was hiding in the shade of the trees. But the presence in the shade didn't budge. Until the moment I found them, they had no intention of revealing themselves. I know already! I know you're there! I screamed out angrily at them again, but even still, they didn't move at all. Then I'll go over there myself. With all due vigilance, I approached, step by step. Stepping into the tree's shadow, I saw a human figure there, and it is... I think I know who it is. That figure was curled up like a small animal. Yep, I knew it. Rena! When she realized I had found her, her expression softened. She seemed apologetic, but wasn't going to speak a word. Did you have some business with me? I wouldn't accept that silence and screamed the question at her.
Not really. It's just,
Rena was in a panic with tears welling up in her eyes. But it was obvious that she had been following me. What about the club?
Since you're not, I'm not.
That shouldn't matter. Don't mind me and just play.
But I'm just worried about you.
Thinking about how I'd been acting up until now, it wasn't hard to imagine that my behavior could have been perceived as strange. Rena was concerned. At a quick glance, that's how it would seem. But I wasn't going to let my guard down that easily. Even if that was really the case, she still wouldn't have to do something like try to tail me. She should have called out to me when I was leaving and gone out right with me. But Rena didn't do that. She kept her distance from me and matched my walking speed. On top of that, she matched the sound of her footsteps and deviously tried to hide her presence from me. Then, after she realized I noticed she was there, what a weird sentence, she held her breath as she tried hiding from me. She wore a timid expression that would force one to take pity on her, but without a doubt, she was tailing me. Stop following me! Still glaring at Rena, I continued walking onwards. After I'd walked for a bit, she ignored my command and began walking again, so I yelled at her once more. I told you not to follow me!
Eek! But my house is in the same direction.
Then walk ahead of me! I'll start walking once I can't see you anymore. I moved out of the way and waved my bat violently to urge her forward.
I'd like to go home together with you.
Making a pitiful expression, she meekly squeaked out the words in a voice that she knew would cut into my heart. That agitated me to no end. I knew it was a lie. If you wanted to go home together, then you should have called out to me. Now you're just blurting out random lies.
I'm sorry.
It seemed that the seething anger within me was written all over my face. Even without me saying anything, Rena had understood what I was feeling inside. If you get it, then go! I swung the bat, urging her again to walk. Rena looked back and forth between me and the bat and started walking hesitantly, then stopped again. Go on, then! Hurry!
I'm going. So please stop with the bat. It's scary.
Rena guarded herself while pointing at me holding the bat. She may have realized that I wasn't planning on using this bat for baseball. I lowered the bat, but still guardedly opened the way for her. Go. There's no problem now, is there? There was nothing else she could protest. She passed by me timidly so as to not set me off. As I watched her pass by, she stopped completely after having barely moved at all. Hey, don't stop! Then a powerful gust blew past us, barraging my face with dust. Uh-oh, demon time. The dust got into my eyes and clouded my vision. While rubbing my eyes with my left hand, I swung blindly with the bat in my right, protecting the small opening I had presented. But Rena didn't even try to attack during that opening. Attack me? No, she hadn't budged an inch. I could tell from the sound of her fluttering skirt in the wind. As her skirt settled, so did the silence. At that moment, the voice inside of me immediately warned me of impending danger. I was caught by surprise. The smell of the air had changed? Without me realizing it, the air around me suddenly felt like a calamity was about to befall me. It was like the air had suddenly become invisible concrete, like Rena and I were locked in this space. Rena didn't move an inch. Also unable to move, I stared at her back. Rena was the first to break the silence. Instantly, she altered her stance. I felt like I had just witnessed her shift from Rena into that other person who looks like Rena. But the voice was one I knew well, which filled me with a kind of bewildering pity. Carelessly, I felt relief upon hearing that pitiful voice.
Well, excuse me, but, can I ask you something?
Too shy to even turn around, Rena squeezed her voice out desperately, as she trembled. What?
Well, why do you have a bat, I wonder?
The question Rena asked was by no means unexpected. I can carry whatever I want.
But, you didn't have one up until today. Why so suddenly?
It's alright if I decide to do something suddenly, isn't it? Is it strange that I have a bat?
Because, Keiichi, you're not the kind of person to play baseball. It's weird.
I couldn't tell what kind of answer she was looking for, and I was getting tired of answering her. I just suddenly got the urge to play baseball. Is that so weird?
It's weird.
She answered instantly, and that annoyed me slightly. I just suddenly wanted to play baseball, and I wanted to practice my swing, so I'm carrying around a bat. What's strange about that?
Strange. Weird. Definitely. Why, you too?
Your ramblings are annoying me. Is it that strange for me to have an interest in sports? I tried to sound a bit more threatening to end the conversation. Until my suspicions about Rena were cleared, I had no obligation to answer her questions.
I'm sorry. Don't get so angry.
Rena still didn't turn around and spat out words of apology one after the next.
Just one last thing. Tell me one last thing.
I don't feel like talking anymore. Hurry up and go! I yelled loudly at her, causing her to flinch like she had been struck. Seeing her in such a pathetic state caused my heart to ache sorely. But even though she was afraid, she stubbornly kept herself from moving. Before I was able to threaten her again, Rena asked her final question.
Why is even your bat the same?
Ooh, I know what that means. What did she mean by the bat was the same? I had no idea what she was talking about. What are you saying?
I mean, why is even the bat the same?
I don't understand what you mean at all. Say it clearly. Even still, Rena didn't turn around. After inhaling deeply, she screamed.
I mean, why is even the bat the same as Satoshi-kun's?
Satoshi being... Huh? Upon hearing that name out of the blue, I became dumbfounded for a brief moment. By Satoshi, did she mean the student who transferred out last year? No, that couldn't be. Rena had tried to cover it up by saying he transferred, but Oishi-san told me quite clearly that he was missing. He was a student who sat at my desk, at my seat, up until last year. He was believed to have been demoned away by Oyashiro-sama's curse. I didn't know the details about his disappearance. The aunt he lived with was killed the night of the Watanagashi by a drug addict, and not long after that, he suddenly vanished and was now missing. That Satoshi and I were... What? My gaze fell to the bat in my hands. Could it be? Satoshi Hojo. Ooh. It was a bit difficult to see, but that was what was written on the white tape at the end of the bat. I see. So this was Satoshi's bat. Oh. This was Satoshi's bat. Since nobody was using it, I borrowed it. It's not a problem, is it?
That's not it!
The way Rena said that made it seem like this bat was something that should never be touched. Like it was some sort of offering at a shrine, or a memento of the deceased. I could only stand there, perplexed and unable to respond. Rena continued speaking without waiting for a reply.
Why is it that you're doing the exact same thing Satoshi-kun did when it happened to him?
Rena was talking about more than just the bat belonging to Satoshi.
It was the same with Satoshi-kun. He joined a baseball team, but he didn't really like baseball.
What does that have to do with me?
Satoshi-kun also suddenly started walking around with a bat one day. He joined a team, but he wasn't the type to play sports.
What about it? I closed my mouth before I could say that out loud. Listen carefully, Keiichi. Rena is trying to tell us something important.
Satoshi-kun also one day came to school all by himself all of a sudden. Just like Keiichi-kun. Then one day, he suddenly started practicing his swing. Just like Keiichi-kun. Then one day, he suddenly began carrying the bat around with him. Just like Keiichi-kun. Then one day, he suddenly...
What? Rena had swallowed her words. Rena's sudden silence brought a hush back to the surrounding area. It was then that I could finally digest the content of the entire conversation. She was saying my chain of actions was exactly the same as Satoshi's. What was the meaning of this? Up until just now, I'd forgotten all about Satoshi. I never paid much thought to him in the first place. Not only that, I didn't even know anything of what he'd done. My actions today should have been my own creation, after all the planning I had done. But they had been the exact same as Satoshi's? Then Satoshi... No, more importantly, if both Satoshi and I acted the same, then there was a really good possibility that what happened after would be the same. Rena, that day, what happened to Satoshi? Rena knew. She knew what became of Satoshi. No, forget about what happened to a guy in the past. What's going on outside my room? My brother's either throwing shit around in a craze, or he's throwing shit around because he's stupid. Rena knew what was going to happen to me. Answer me, Rena! Satoshi, what happened to him? With that, I grabbed Rena's shoulder violently and forcibly turned her around to face me. As I faced her, I felt a jolt travel through my entire body.
I told you, Keiichi-kun.
It was that person that I didn't know. At least, it definitely wasn't the Rena Ryugu I'd been talking to up until now. The voice just now didn't have a trace of the trembling or emotion that it had had before. The amount of regret I felt for turning her around so carelessly was unsurpassed. That gaze that pierced like a cold needle, the smile on her face that invoked an image of having been carved out by a knife. Chills went down my spine. My mind froze under a layer of rime? Excuse me? What is that exactly? Both of Rena's eyes pierced through mine, leaving me unable to look away. As if to remind me of the fear from that time before, Rena brought her face close to mine, so close that I could feel her breath. Her face had filled my entire field of vision. Then, her sharply shaped lips grew even sharper. Like the curve of a crescent moon, she grinned.
I told you, Keiichi-kun.
After a short pause, Rena repeated the same words again.
Satoshi-kun, you see, transferred out.
Transferred? Meaning what? What Rena meant must have been some new definition of transfer that I was previously not aware of. My throat and lips dried up. I couldn't even acknowledge what I had just heard. All I could do was swallow down my own saliva. It would seem that Rena saw that as a nod. She pulled her gaze back and spryly stepped back 2-3 paces. As she did, my legs gave out and I fell to my knees pathetically. Rena and me on my knees underneath her emotionless smile. That had to be a very odd sight indeed. Seeing me in that pathetic state, she neither scoffed at me nor held out her hand. But I could neither stand nor escape with her gaze shooting through my eyes. There was undoubtedly a metal bat in my hand, but right now, it was useless to me. I was like a fly caught in her web. Heavy sweat beaded all over my body. I could feel it dripping from my skin.
But you won't, will you, Keiichi-kun?
Rena finally released me from that cage of time after what felt like an eternity. But her question was missing something important and was incredibly vague. Once again I swallowed hard, urging her on. To what? What did she not want me to do?
Transfer.
Okay. Achievement unlocked, pinch hitter. Are you guys sure that next episode will be the finale? It feels like there's still a lot more left. Satoshi and I had what? All my well-planned actions throughout the day turned out to have been nothing more than a reenactment of what Satoshi had done. Satoshi. Had he really been in the same situation as I was now? The friends he had gotten along with had changed suddenly, and for no reason, at least none that I had noticed, planned to kill him? Then, fearing for his life as I am, he got a bat to protect himself, and carried it around every day to practice his swing? And then one day, suddenly, he transferred. My blood went cold, causing a prickling sensation to course through my veins. Starting near my heart, it radiated outwards, from the top of my head to the soles of my feet, chilling every part of me without recourse. What did she mean by transfer? What did she mean by transfer? Was Satoshi still at wherever he transferred to? I just heard a knock or something. I think a bird ran into my window. Was he the only one who would be able to understand me? Would he be able to tell me why it all ended up like this? More importantly, where did he transfer to? What did she mean by transfer? What did she mean by transfer? Before I knew it, I was at my front door. The frigid knob was hard to turn. Was nobody home? It wasn't that odd of an occurrence. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the single key attached to my fur seal keychain. I stepped into the entryway. Just as I was about to take off my shoes, a chill ran down my spine. Someone had entered right behind me. Like a classmate messing around, standing right up against my back. You're kidding, right? It had to be my imagination. Logically speaking, it was impossible for someone to be able to hide their presence within my personal space all the way through the door. But there was undoubtedly someone behind me. Hey now. Hey, Keiichi. How do you know they're there even though they're behind you? Because I could hear the sound of flowing hair. There's no other reason I'd hear that sound. That was the presence. Because I could hear the sound of them blinking. Keiichi Maebara, there's no way you could hear that. My most base instincts were warning me of the presence. Common sense was telling me that it was just my imagination. It was just my imagination. There was nobody behind me. I began to erase the mental image of an eerie figure standing behind me. But at the same time, I asked myself, if there was nobody, then what was I feeling? As an uncomfortable sensation crawled up my spine. Actually, wouldn't it be better if there was somebody there? If there was nobody there when you turned around, would you be able to accept that? I'd be able to answer all those questions just by looking behind me. But I didn't have enough courage to even do that simple task. No, right, I could try speaking to them. The person behind me, might answer me. It was a random thought. I didn't care how I went about it, just so long as I didn't have to turn around. If I had calmed down and thought about it, I would have known that wouldn't have solved anything. Who is it? I spoke in such a hoarse, broken voice that I couldn't believe it was my own. I could almost feel them contemplating their response. I felt it. There's no way I should be able to do that. Calm down, Keiichi. It's all in your head. That time, I was certain I heard it. As if hesitantly trying to answer my inquiry, I was certain I could hear the sound of somebody inhaling. I heard it. I heard it. I heard it clearly. It was a girl. A young girl. I didn't know who, but a tiny speck of courage in me, however reckless it was, inspired a primal yet fitting solution to this current predicament. A scream. All the force of my body released from my lungs and through my throat, ceasing all thought processes in my head. Suppressing all my thoughts and emotions, I began to collapse like a house of cards, somehow managing to twist my body and look back as I did so. It was definitely there. Right there. Somebody was there. Until the moment I turned around, until I brought the area behind me into my field of vision, they were definitely there. Falling face up, my eyes traced the remnants of the presence suspended in the empty space. It couldn't be. They were invisible. They looked like they weren't there, but were they actually still standing there? As I screamed, all the emotions I was holding back burst free in a violent wave. However, I was decidedly calm as my emotional dam collapsed. The turbulent wave of pent-up emotions was skillfully diverted into a torrent of aggression. That emotion was definitely required to extricate myself from the bizarre situation happening right in front of me. In my state of heightened lucidity, I entrusted my body to the fury. The metal bat held firm in my right hand as if drawn there by a magnet. A mid-level sweep would be the hardest attack to dodge. I remembered reading something like that from a book about swordsmanship or something. Ah! I brandished my will to fight. The afterimage of that amalgamation of metal flashed as it swung from left to right, beating against the entryway. The bat slammed into the right wall, the tip rebounding violently. Very calmly, I transferred the force of the rebound into a sweep to the left. The door of the shoe cupboard was split into pieces. Those two swings whiffed through empty space, but they seemed to have a great psychological impact on the enemy. I could feel the panic emanating from that space. The attack wasn't the only thing required. I extracted the bat from the cupboard it was embedded in and screamed as I spun my entire body around in a large arc. Ah! My scream shook the air, imbuing my ferocious swing with even more destructive power. Crack! Oops. Did I middle click or did I right click? What? How did I Oh, I must have scrolled, huh? Yeah, I totally did. Alright. Without mercy or restraint, my violent strike, with certainly fatal force behind it, shattered the top of the cupboard. None of my attacks struck the enemy, but my ferocity had certainly seemed to impact them. Breathing heavily, my entire body soaked in sweat, the invisible enemy, there but not there, dispersed. When I was certain that the enemy had retreated, I locked the front door and latched the curtain chain. Okay. No way. Had it only feigned retreat and was now inside my house? Once again, I channeled my aggression and searched the house for the presence, but it was gone. I had succeeded in fending it off. At that moment, the tension drained from my body and I let out a deep sigh of relief. All of the emotions I'd been holding back chaotically merged together and began to flood out. A hodgepodge of fear, accomplishment, and disbelief all mixed together and began to flow through my body. Unable to deal with each individual feeling, I beat them all back with the strongest, exhaustion. Even in this moment, I remained composed. After checking that all the doors throughout the house were locked, I went up to my room on the second floor and closed the curtains. I straightened my back and tilted my head back a little. After clearing my mind of all my idle thoughts, I managed to calm down even more. What was that at the front door? There was definitely something there. Thinking about it, maybe it was just an apparition I dreamt up in my confused state, but I really didn't think that was the case. Calm down, Keiichi Maebara. Compose yourself. But no matter how calmly I thought about it, what just happened wasn't a figment of my imagination. It was obviously a supernatural phenomenon, and without a doubt, something was behind me. It wasn't some sort of illusion I saw amidst my confusion and disorientation. Proof? I had just one piece. When I asked who is it, they inhaled as if they were about to answer. That sound had queerly reached my ears. The situation I was in right now was still unclear. Either I'd been possessed by the supernatural phenomenon known as Oyashiro-sama's curse, or this was a ruse by the villagers who believed in it and were imitating it. Either way, their motives were unclear. The roundabout way it had been done was also still a mystery. If it was perpetrated by humans, that would mean admitting that it was Rena and the rest of them doing it, but it would be solvable. Uishi-san and the rest of the police would surely arrest my enemy. But if it was a manifestation of Oyashiro-sama's curse, I wondered what would happen. Uishi-san very clearly declared that curses didn't exist. At that time, those words were pretty dependable, but as things were now, with the rising possibility that the perpetrators were not human, he suddenly seemed quite unreliable. If I told Uishi-san this was the work of Oyashiro-sama's curse, what would happen? I couldn't imagine his reaction, but it would go without question that a void would expand rapidly between myself and Uishi-san. With me having so few allies to begin with and not being able to confidently declare whether or not this was a curse, there was no merit to doing that. I'd better keep the facts of what just happened at the doorway to myself. It would be better if I didn't add what happened here to the memo behind the clock. There was still the ever so slight possibility that I was actually confused when I thought I was composed, and I was just going berserk in the entryway. How wonderful would that be if that was really what happened? I would be able to refute Oyashiro-sama's curse. But if I denied Oyashiro-sama's curse, then that would mean admitting that Rena and the rest were the perpetrators. If I said that Rena and the rest weren't the perpetrators, then that would mean believing in Oyashiro-sama's curse. By denying both of those, I would be admitting that I myself was losing it. The three options from which I couldn't choose became a trilemma of sorts. They mixed together and formed a whirlpool in my mind, making my head spin. Once again, I straightened myself and leaned my head back slightly to cool myself down. Calm down, Keiichi. Accept what has actually happened as reality. Stop thinking of anything more than that. But I couldn't help but think of it. My nose is not being very nice to me today. How wonderful it would be if it turned out I was delirious and everything up until now was a figment of my imagination. Oyashiro-sama's curse wouldn't exist and I would still be bestest buddies with Rena and the rest. I would have to be crazy. That was the first time in my life I'd ever wished for such a thing. But chapter not over yet. The phone rang noisily downstairs. Generally, there were no calls for me, so I never really answered the phone much. But I do like phones, so I got one and put it on display in my room to make me look cool. But since my parents weren't here, I had no choice. I squirmed off the bed and went downstairs. Hello, this is the Maebara residence. My nose is not at all being nice to me. Keiichi? This is Mom. I intuitively had a bad feeling about this. It was because I thought she was going to ask me to go out and buy some things. So I took the initiative. What? I don't mind having instant noodles for dinner. There's still a lot of them. The other day, we went out as a family and bought a whole case of cup noodles. I wanted to get a bunch of different kinds, actually. But they refused since the individual packs were expensive. So instead, I got a whole case of the mega-sized pork bone and ginger flavored ones I liked. But my parents don't like strong flavors and didn't touch any of them, so the cupboards were still full of them. So you see, there really isn't a need to go shopping, right? Keiichi, I'm not asking you to go shopping. Both Mommy and Daddy have to go to Tokyo right now because of work. Huh? Right now? This was really abrupt. No, we're already here. We left this afternoon. It's quite a distance to Tokyo from Hinamizawa. Gunning at full speed down the highway would still take 6 hours. Dad has a license, but since he doesn't like the highway, they likely took the train. It would have taken longer. I'm thinking you might understand since you heard us speaking last night, but it has to do with Daddy's contract. Right now, things aren't going so smoothly. Now that she mentioned it, I did remember that they talked all that time about how his job prospects weren't looking so good. Daddy is really sensitive about things like this, so if we leave things as they are, it will affect his work. Part of my father's particular fragile artistic personality, his emotions changed as easily as the fall sky. You could also just say he couldn't take criticism. But something like that can be done over the phone. Keiichi, this is your father's job, so can you support him a bit, please? Anyway, it's just faster to talk about it in person, so there wouldn't be any misunderstandings. As their son, there was nothing more I could say once they started talking about work. So we'll be back tomorrow night. Keiichi, will you be fine on your own? It's not like I'll die or anything. Keiichi, you shouldn't speak so lightly of dying. If there's something troubling you, just talk to us. I believe Mommy will be able to help out. Yesterday I did bring up if I died rather abruptly, so I suppose they were a little worried. But really I was more depressed by the fact that nothing would be solved by telling them. But I didn't plan on dying. At least not while I still knew nothing. I would never allow it. I won't die. I won't. I'll survive even if I have to gnaw my leg off. Yeah, see you then. Tomorrow morning, make sure to wake up and eat your breakfast. And don't forget to take a bath and brush your teeth. Yeah, see you. The call ended like that. Sometimes my parents went off to Tokyo for business meetings, but Tokyo was far away. They normally did things by phone. The times they did go were normally planned out in advance. Never happened this suddenly. I couldn't say that those circumstances didn't feel strange, or rather, unnatural. Anyway, I only needed to recognize the reality of the situation. That tonight, I was the only one in the house. That when my parents came back from work, I'd be gone, missing, vanished. Looking back on the series of events of the previous 5 years involving Oyashiro-sama's curse, it wouldn't seem that strange at all. Come to think of it, it was getting pretty late. I didn't think it was good that the only light on in the whole house was from my room on the second floor. It was the same as broadcasting to the enemy that my parents were gone and this was their chance. First I ran to the living room, flicked on the lights, and turned the TV on to a reassuring volume. Next was the study. I similarly turned on the lights and some music. With this, from the outside it would look like my parents were here. Once again I went through the house, checking to see if there was anything left unlocked. When I saw the veranda and the laundry still hanging out there, I went pale. That would have made it too obvious. I needed to take it down. I snatched down the laundry haphazardly and erased all traces that my mother wasn't there. It should be fine now. Ah! The garage! They hadn't gone all the way to Tokyo by car, but they had gone up to Okinomiya Station. The garage was empty, wide open, and in plain sight. This was not good. I panicked and rushed out the back to close the normally open garage door. It should be fine now. I needed to get the paper! Mom always got the paper. Since they left in the afternoon, the evening paper was still out there. My premonition was correct. I pulled out everything from the mailbox and dropped it in the entryway. With this, for sure this time, it should be fine. Come to think of it, leaving the cupboard busted like that for my little freakout was kind of bad. I'll just say I tripped and fell and the bat I was holding smashed into it. Even so, just leaving it in its current state wasn't good. I should clean it up a little before Mom got back and scolded me. Phone again. I remembered that there was a broom and dustpan in the closet. As I was going to get them, the phone rang once again. Hello, this is the Maebara residence. No, is this Keiichi-kun? Is your mother around? She isn't here at the moment. You idiot, Keiichi Maebara! Don't reveal that your parents are gone. You can follow up still. Calm down and take care of it. I think she'll be back soon. That wasn't a good response either. Then I might say to call again, or to tell her to call them when she comes back. Then that's fine. It wasn't anything important. Well then, sorry for the bother. The scenario I feared didn't play out, eliciting a sigh of relief. That call was fortunate in more ways than one. I'd have to deal with any telephone calls coming in from my parents tonight. I was somehow able to deal with the phone call just now, but I couldn't continue to rely on such poor improvisation. I needed to make up a good story to explain that my parents were home but couldn't answer the phone at the moment. They were making tempura and couldn't step away right now. That wasn't good enough. They were sick and went to bed because they weren't feeling well. Was that going to be safe enough? I was thinking about it on the way back to my room when the phone rang once again. It was like they were calling because they knew I was going to lie. I didn't want to pick it up, but I knew I had to. They'd suspect my parents weren't here. I should have just taken the phone off the hook under the pretense that I didn't realize that it was. But since the phone rang, I had to pick it up. I prepared myself and lifted up the receiver. Hello? I stopped announcing that this was the Maebara residence. I had no reason to be kind to someone I didn't know the identity of. But unlike my uncouth voice, the person on the other side sounded goofy and lighthearted. Hello! My apologies for calling so late. This is Uishi from the Okinomiya bookstore. Uishi-san? Is that you, Maebara-san? Good evening. Good to hear you are doing well. Wait just a moment, please. I grabbed the portable handset and rushed up to my room with it. It was the same no matter where I was since there was no one else home, but I wanted to be in a spot that just felt a bit safer when speaking on the phone with Uishi-san. Sorry for the wait. How are things? Anything changed since then? Uh-oh. Since then? When was that exactly? There was something about the brazen way he talked that rubbed me the wrong way. The last time I spoke with Uishi-san was 2 days ago. The day I stayed home from school, I met Uishi-san on the way back from the hospital, and we headed into town for lunch and had a talk. Then after that, Rena and Mion came to check up on me. Whenever I spoke with Uishi-san, they always knew about it. It was like that since the first time I met him. Today's phone call may well be found out by them as well. Hello? Can you hear me, Maebara-san? Huh? Sorry. What did you say? I asked if anything's changed since last time. There wasn't an answer, so I got a bit worried. Not really. The words stopped in my throat. There was a ton of stuff that happened. All of it baffling. What should I talk about? I didn't understand any of it, but I should try asking. If I didn't ask now, I may never have another chance. This night when my parents weren't home, I had no guarantees I would make it through the night safely after all. Well, Uishi-san, it seems that someone is after me. Really? It could all just be coincidence, but that day I missed school when I was sick, the two of them came to check up on me. Which two? Rena and Mion. They started asking about how I had lunch with you. What next? They left me some mochi when they came to visit, but there was a needle inside. Fortunately, I somehow didn't swallow it. I wonder, could that have just been a threat? About the needle? It was just one of those common sewing needles you see all the time. There was a hole to thread string through. Not that, Maebara-san. The needle itself. That's evidence. It could be used as proof that they threatened you. Where is that needle? That's right. That's it! I dropped the receiver and rushed downstairs. When I tossed the mochi, I had overlooked it out of terror, but that needle was a valuable piece of evidence. Let's see, I threw the mochi and needle at the wall together. If it was there, then it would be on the living room wall. But my prudent mother had cleaned that living room wall, and there was not a trace of mochi left on it. Could it be that it dropped in the gap between the wall and the carpet? I frantically searched by running my palm along the carpet, but nothing turned up. I tried moving around the sofa and desks, pulling up the carpet, then flapping it around, but I couldn't find the needle. Did my mom clean up everything without noticing it? It was just 2 days ago. I didn't know what day they collected the burnable trash, but it may still be in the trash bin in the kitchen. I rushed into the kitchen, opened up the lid of the pail, and poured out the contents. But even at a glance, I could tell that it would be incredibly difficult to find a needle in this pile of trash. I was looking for a needle in a trash stack. I know, I'll try running my hand through it. It was a bit gross, but I was looking for a needle. If I felt a small prick, I'll be able to find it. It was a pretty tactless method, but it was the quickest. I held my breath and started striking the pile of trash with my hand. Phil flew about. There was nothing more disgusting than this, but it was not the time to be concerned about such details. I continued on for a while, but nothing turned up. I wanted to search more thoroughly, but I was still on the phone. I shouldn't keep Uishi-san waiting for too long. Later, when Mom got back, I'd have to ask her if there was a needle. I began hastily scribbling on the notepad affixed to the refrigerator with a magnet. Was there a needle? I scrawled the words with a red pen. I then dashed back up the stairs, where I had been keeping Uishi-san waiting for far too long. Hello? How did it go? I couldn't find it. I was really overwhelmed when it happened, and I see. It would be great if you could find it. Keep it safe. That's right, the needle wasn't the only incident. I had to tell him about this morning with the hit and run. Also, Uishi-san, that isn't all. Actually, this morning, That van was definitely aiming for me. I could say that without question due to the circumstances at the time. Did you see the license plate? I can search for it from here. Damn! At the time, I just flipped out yelling at him, but I didn't look at the plate. What failures on my part with the needle and the plate number? I was so focused just protecting myself that I let some of the most important details slip out of my grasp. I punched my pillow, annoyed at how worthless I was. I'm sorry. I don't know much more than that it was a white van. Nothing to fret about, Maebara-san. Anyone would be shaken up after being hit. I guess all of this really isn't a coincidence, is it? Uishi-san started to hem and haw over on the other end. I could imagine him folding his arms. Also, Rena is acting strange. How so? What Rena said on the way home today, asking why I was so much like Satoshi-kun. Now I could say it with confidence, that Rena knew what happened to Satoshi. She knew that there was more to it than him just simply disappearing. Rena knows. She knows something regarding what happened to Satoshi, the kid who was demoned away last year. What would that be exactly? Rena said I was the same as Satoshi. She said something to the effect that the way things are going, I'll end up with the same fate as Satoshi. Fate, you say? Exactly what kind of fate did she say would befall you? Transferring out, she said. Transferring out? Rena said Satoshi transferred out. So given how things are going with me, I'll transfer out too. Uishi-san let out a stern sigh and then grumbled loudly. Maebara-san, that was probably some sort of threat, or maybe some type of warning. I thought so too. At that point, I started to think, would it be prudent to sum up everything that had happened up until now as the machinations of some human perpetrator? Other than the theory of it being Rena and the others, I was left with Oyashiro-sama's curse actually existing as the only explanation. Of course, I couldn't tell that to Uishi-san. Except, Rena's strange behavior could be proof of either scenarios. Whether it was Oyashiro-sama's curse being real, or everything being part of a conspiracy committed by all of the villagers, Rena was involved. Rena had to know something. Rena was suspicious. What exactly was Rena? I couldn't help but think she was somehow involved with the prior string of mysterious deaths. I seemed to recall that Uishi-san had admitted that he had dug into Rena's past a little. He was probably just downplaying it when he said a little, meaning he had actually dug pretty deep, most likely. I wanted to hear about Rena. I wanted to know what happened at her previous school, among other things that were still unknown to me. If Rena was somebody I should suspect, no, not that. I wanted to know the truth. Tonight, I was alone in this huge house. Even though I said I couldn't count on them, I had lost the security I felt I had just by my parents being around. It wasn't like this house was some sort of fortress or castle. If a malicious person decided to use brute force, they'd easily gain entry. There were no other residences close to the Maebara residence. No one would be able to hear something, no matter how loud it was. I had never felt as much resentment towards my father's artistic temperament and the fact that he had this house built in such a remote location as I did right now. I wondered if I would still be here by tomorrow morning, so I had to ask, right now, because I had no idea when the next chance would come. Uishi-san, I have something I wanted to ask about. Please don't keep anything from me. Sure, ask away. Even though he was so far away on the other end of the line, this was the most reliable he had ever felt. I wanted to ask about Rena, about what happened at her previous school. Actually, regarding Rena's... I noticed a sound that had been going on for a while now. Since I was so focused on the call, I hadn't paid attention to it at first, but I finally realized it was the doorbell. The time was 7 o'clock. It was past the time the postman would be making a delivery, and past any sensible time for a neighbor to be visiting. I considered just acting like nobody was home, but that wouldn't be good. That would ruin all the work I put into making it look like my parents were home. I need to answer the door. Hello? Maebara-san? Sorry. Someone seems to be at the door. I'm going to go see who it is. A guest? I see, my apologies. Should we end this phone call now? That would be a problem. No, I'll be back in a second. Do you mind if I just leave the phone on? It's fine, I don't mind. I dropped the handset on my bed and dashed down to the door. I need to make up a good excuse to get them to leave. I had a hunch it was the lady who called right before Uishi-san did. In which case, it would be one of the neighbors who's friends with my mom. I'll just say Mom isn't feeling well and went to bed early. That'd be the easiest option. Okay, well, I realize we're not at the end of this segment, but I think I'm still just going to have to end this episode here because it's going on a bit longer than I intended, so yeah. Presumably next episode should be the finale, but honestly I'm not so sure because I know there's still a few other things that have to happen, but maybe it's just going to rapid fire them. I don't know. We'll see. Either way, that's going to be it for this episode, guys. If you liked it, then be sure to press the like button. And if you didn't like it, then fuck you too. Remember to subscribe, follow me on Twitter, and hit that notification bell to stay up to date on all my videos and stuff. And as always, my name is Godzi, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.